and welcome back to the Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
Fucking hot.
Yes.
It's just too hot and my brain's not working, but we'll try and get through it.
Yeah.
Try and get through it. I've seen this film enough, so hopefully we'll be okay. And of course, today we are talking about the Quatermass Xperiment.
Yes.
With an X.
Yeah.
As
opposed to the original, which actually did have an E in it.
Which was spelt correctly, yes. This one was going extreme. It was like the 90s and the 50s.
They purposely went for the X certificate, so
of course.
So why not?
Oh yeah, it's good. It's all good. So yeah, this is 1955. I think it's the second time they adapted this. They did a TV series to begin with, and then they made the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first see this one?
I have a feeling it was a late night Channel 2 job.
Yeah, I want to say that's probably the same for me, actually. I know that I saw The Pit first.
Yeah, so think I did too.
This was definitely after that.
And I've seen The Pit more, I think, than
oh yeah,
this guy. I actually like The Pit a lot more than this one.
I love The Pit, but as I think we agreed last week, it felt weird jumping ahead to that and starting here. So of course, in The Pit, it was Andrew Keir playing Quatermass, who I think he works better as a likable Quatermass.
Yeah.
I kind of love Brian Donlevy here as just asshole Quatermass.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes more likable in the second one, actually. He's less of a dick in the second one. But in this one, he's very self-serving. Like,
I'd actually forgotten how brash he is.
Oh yeah, he's an asshole.
When he sort of first turns up, he just starts barking orders at you. Like, wow.
And the whole way through. I mean, when he's arguing about taking him to hospital and stuff, he's just an asshole. Like,
he really is.
But he plays it very well. And I don't think that Andrew Keir could have been such a this way. I just don't see him playing that kind of role.
No.
So
I think the original. I think the main difference is, of course, the original was he was English, and obviously when they were adapting it for the movies, they obviously wanted to appeal to an American audience, as these things go, and they wanted to cast an American actor for it and change it. And I think that the initial script they changed a few times and made him a lot more sort of American and a lot more, they changed the doctor guy, Briscoe, is it?
Yes.
Changed him as well to he was going to be American as well, but then they rejigged it later and they put him back. And I think my favourite character actually is the Doctor. I think he's
the one person who's like rational and nice.
Yes, he's probably what Quatermass should be, really.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But he's ultimately what Quatermass ends up being in the series of movies.
Yeah,
ultimately. But here, Quatermass is very much a self-serving professor, and he just wants fame, and he wants to be the guy who, all he really cares, he's kind of like Frankenstein in that kind of like Hammer's Frankenstein in that way. Not as bad, but he's only interested in his work, and that's
he's more of an obsessive for the pure purpose of being an obsessive of these things.
Well, and for his perceived greater good of humanity.
Yeah.
Like Frankenstein was like, this is going to do wonders for humanity.
Yeah, no one's ever die.
So if I kill a few people to get there, this is worth it. And I think Quatermass is the same, where he's like, well, you had no authorization to shoot these fuckers into space, but he's like, I don't care. Like, if I do this, it's better for mankind. So if a few people die, whatever.
His whole little argument with Lionel Jeffries' character, the man from the Ministry.
Yeah.
He's the man from the Ministry. He's having all these rational sort of arguments towards, but he's just
going reasonable.
It's science.
Yeah, science.
Science, damn you!
The greatest argument of all. So yeah, we start off with with a woman and her rapey man.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Who's very like, I was like, whoa, dude.
This is a real 50s B movie beginning.
Yeah, it really is.
With a giggly couple.
Yeah, giggly couple, but his hands are everywhere.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, they even get a tumble in the hay before the rocket comes down.
Yeah, he chases her into the barn. And
I do think, I think she might have been saved by that rocket.
Yeah, I mean, she was giggling and laughing along, but like, he is very not sure about him. But yes, anyway, he is saved by a big explosion outside, and of course, then her dad comes in, which is kind of awkward. But luckily, there's a big like comic book rocket in the ground to distract the father from this kid.
1950s rocket.
Yeah, proper 1950s rocket. And if you haven't seen the movie, us saying a 1950s rocket, that's exactly what you're getting.
Yeah,
it is exactly a 1950s rocket
cylinder with fins. That's basically it, isn't it?
I love that design though.
Yeah,
I absolutely love the classic rocket design.
Yeah. You don't need it. Well, to be honest, you don't really need much more than that.
No, not really. So yeah, of course, everyone just looks on in awe at this and terror at this fiery rocket stuck in the ground. And before long, emergency services start to arrive. To kind of try and control the scene. Of course, they don't really understand what's going on. You get a great conversation with two firemen who are like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, what are we doing here?
It's incredible. It's like radiating heat, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so they're trying to keep away from it. The farmer had got close, but he got a little bit singed.
Yes, yeah.
So they eventually, Quatermass and the rocket group turn up in their VW camper van.
Yes, and even on the way, Quatermass doesn't care. Like, the wife of one of the astronauts is there, and he's just like, you might have, the guy in the front's like, you might have killed them, Quatermass. He's like, killed them? I brought them back. That's all that people will care about.
Exactly,
it's like, whoa, dude. I brought these 3 corpses back. That's all that people will ever remember before.
Oh, I must say the wife.
She
Martine, she is such a terrible actress.
Her overacting in the bit in the car later is laugh out loud funny.
Oh God, she apparently she was some American executive's girlfriend.
Oh, she wasn't actually an actress.
And she was a beauty queen, and I think she wanted to be an actress.
She shouldn't have been.
The executive basically said, I don't want you in American movies, so he basically...
we're going to ship you over to the UK.
Exactly. I guess in the hopes that no Americans would see her in this terrible movie sort of thing. So yeah, she's terrible.
It's funny because it's generally a very good movie with really good actors in it.
All the performances except for hers are great.
Later, there's even a child who is perfectly fine in this film.
You know that
acting her. No, I don't know.
It's Jane Asher.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was one of her first roles.
Ah.
I was really happy with to learn that because she goes on. Obviously, in real life, she went on to be Paul McCartney's girlfriend, and she became a really good actress. She's in one of my favourite performances of hers is in Mask of the Red Death. Right. She's in that, and she was in another. I can't remember what the other Hammer movies. She's in another Hammer movie, and yeah, she's great. Is the tiny little girl who finds him in a very sort of Frankenstein moment. Yeah.
So they turn up on site, and yes, the man from the Ministry, Lionel Jeffries, I think, playing Blake.
Yeah, Mr. Blake.
He is immediately having a go at basically
how reckless he is. Basically,
he never had the permission to launch this thing.
No,
he just did it anyway.
And he said, if I'd have waited for permission, I'd never have got off the ground.
And I think Blake's like, yeah, and you might not have killed these people either.
Yeah.
But of course, they discover that it's red hot, as you said, it's radiating heat, and I
think he says it will take 4 hours for it to cool down.
Yeah. So Blake's like, we need to open this now and get these people out.
Yeah.
And Quatermass is like, that's red hot. You can't open that. You will kill them from the steam if you open it. We need to wait at least 4 hours. And then they manage to get contact with inside, and they hear some knocking on the inside. And then suddenly Quatermass is like, let's open it right now. And Blake's like, you just said we couldn't do that.
We're going to roast them, yeah.
And he's like, well, fuck it.
It kind of is, isn't it? He kind of basically, he doesn't. I mean,
he like 180s within the space of 5 minutes, right in front of the guy. It's great.
Like, screw it. They might be dead already. There's at least one of them alive.
I wonder if at that moment it suddenly dawned on Quatermass, like he just suddenly had lawsuit. Like, oh, but the lawsuit. We probably should get him out right now.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, after the argument, the door to the rocket is opened.
Yeah, they get fire crews to hose down the
they bring the temperature down with hoses. I'm not sure it would work that quickly, but fine.
Yeah.
They do, and they remotely open the door. And we see a single astronaut makes it out the door, where he's greeted by his wife and by Quatermass, who's he's thrilled. He's like, hey, someone made it. They're somewhat alive. That's good. Not dead yet.
He doesn't speak, but he does. Well, he doesn't speak at first. Then he whispers to one of them as he's going into the ambulance to help him.
Yes. Yeah.
They go into the rocket and
they find no one.
They find, yeah.
But it's a mystery. The spacesuits are there, and it was pressured and sealed, so no one left. So it's a total mystery.
I love that rocket set as well.
Me too.
It's a really cool little, like, just basic little rocket set with just a couple of cots in it and sort of basically a driver's seat and some instrumentation. It just looks really well done.
Yeah. So yeah, the mystery ends up hitting the papers, and they're like, yeah, there's this mysterious thing.
They're all saying, this rocket success. They're all saying, it's expect the success is like, yeah, okay, sort of.
yeah. But of course, by this point, now the police are getting involved.
Yeah.
Lomax, who is from I guess Scotland Yard or something.
Obviously, and most famously, Dixon of Dock Green, which is like watching. It's like Dixon of Dock Green wandering around a Quatermass.
Yeah.
He's actually, I think he brings quite a lot of a levity to the movie, doesn't he? He's actually quite funny.
I find him. What I really like about him is the whole way through the movie, he just keeps trying to have a shave and is constantly interrupted.
Yeah.
I quite like that. By the end of the movie, he's got like that like slight beard, 9 o'clock shadow kind of happening.
Yeah.
So he is. He
says that 3 went up, 2 came back, and that means an investigation.
He's convinced it's a murder inquiry.
Yeah, and Quatermass is like, the best person to investigate this is me.
Yeah,
I understand these things. You don't understand these things, basically.
He's like, the best person to investigate the murder is me. The best person to look after the person I nearly killed in a rocket is me. He's like, I mean, Quatermass is massively intelligent, massively smart, but he just thinks he should control he's a complete control freak. He's like, no, me. I deal with this.
Which is completely different to how he was, portrayed in the other versions.
I like to think that he softened over time. If I watched the 3 movies,
that makes sense to think that.
Because he's still obviously
some humanity, perhaps.
Yeah, because he's still played by the same actor in the second one, and he's still a bit of a dick, but less. And then by the time you get to Quatermass in the pit, he's actually quite a soft-spoken, intelligent, calm. This Quatermass would have had none of the kind of crap that Quatermass puts up with from the military in Quatermass in the pit.
No.
None at all. So I like to think, if I watch them as 3 movies and assume it's the same character, I'm assuming it's a bit of a character arc of sorts. I don't think it's necessarily intentional. It's just different actors playing it very differently. But that's my headcanon. So of course, like you said, Quatermass is having none of that.
And there's a bit slightly later on where he brings the inspector their files.
Yeah, he does leave the information for them.
And one of the things that sort of made me go, oh, that's interesting. He says, you know, their hair color, eye color, and all that sort of stuff, and then things. And then at the end, he adds, and their politics, which I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's very 50s American.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, we're not sending any Russians up into space.
Yeah, exactly.
So Quatermass does leave some information on the three men, and promptly leaves after insulting yet another person.
Like someone else.
Yeah. So Quatermass visits Victor at the lab, and he's kind of like, he's disappointed that this man who is on the brink of death has still not spoken. He's like, he's like almost like pissed off with him. It's like, dude, the guy is like clearly gone through some stuff.
He's sort of sat there looking off into the distance, basically.
Well, yeah, and he started to get the marks on his shoulder, and like he's starting to, you know, weird things are happening.
His face, you know, he's got his face is sort of
his face is gaunt and like
gaunt, and you can tell they basically use latex on his skin to make it look sort of, you know.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that
really cool.
Probably wouldn't have worked in color, but in black and white it looks actually really good.
It's really basic, and I think the effects budget from this was like non-existent. Basically, the guys doing the effects were just paid a wage. They didn't actually have any money for the effects.
Well, by the end of the movie, they were like, has the local fishmonger got squid? That'll do.
Yeah, it's actually tripe.
Is it tripe? Okay.
Yeah,
there is one scene later where I was quite convinced by it, and I was like, wow, I wonder if Ridley Scott saw this, or actually Cameron for Aliens with the autopsy in Aliens. I was like, oh, it's very similar where they're using bits of animal clearly, and it works quite well. It directly reminded me of the facehugger autopsy from Aliens. But yes, so then of course actress of the year turns up.
Oh, yeah, God, actress of the year turns up. And the doctor says that his bone structure is altered.
Yeah, he's like, this poor guy is like, this is beyond me. He needs to go to hospital.
Yeah, like, he's saying there's like there's something wrong with his metabolism and his heartbeat is funny. He shouldn't really be alive.
Yeah, he's like, this is against modern science, and I don't think he's even a doctor. He's like a professor of some kind, or an assistant, like, and he's just like, dude, like, send this guy to hospital, like, he's gonna die here. But of course Quatermass is like, well, you know, would they know what a body does when it's exposed to these kind of temperatures? Because we do. And it's like, yeah, but Quatermass, you could assist the doctors and give them that information.
Yeah.
Like, when a burns victim's brought in, like, they're probably told the kind of things that led up to that by the firemen or by people that then they use that information to treat the patient. Like, you could give that information. The only reason the doctors and nurses won't have that information is because you're refusing to give it to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, for now, he is staying. And then I think we get Lomax turning back up, and we get the "no one wins in a Cold War" line.
Yeah,
which I love.
Yeah,
and it turns.
I think they do end up sending him to a hospital. They end up.
They do eventually. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, Lomax turns up and he's like, "Look, no one wins in a Cold War. One of us has to concede, and I don't have an ego, so fine.
Yeah,
I'll concede." Now it turns out that this poor guy, this poor astronaut, who went into space and was exposed to ungodly terrors and then was brought back half dead. The police took his fingerprints in the ambulance while he was dying.
And he says, well, it's the only thing to do, wasn't it? He wasn't answering any questions.
Like, okay. Sure. They were lucky, because considering what happens to other things that touch this man later, they did well. But yeah, so he ends up showing Quatermass the fingerprints, and he's like, look at the fingerprints, and Quatermass is like, is this a joke? Like, What is this? And it's like, this is no joke. That's his fingerprints. And Quatermass is about to say, it's not even human.
Yeah.
And then he's distracted by a phone call. But yeah, so then, like you said, the professor is convinced, look, Karun needs to go to hospital. He cannot stay here. And Quatermass only agrees. He's like, fine, but he has to be completely isolated. And he can't be, and I love he's like, he can't be seen by anyone. And then he turns around to his wife and he's like, not by anyone. Like, especially not you.
Yeah, not you. I mean, that's one of the other things that does make you sort of slightly laugh about this movie. They've got weird unknown sort of stuff going on. None of them are wearing any like gloves or
nothing
or masks
nothing.
Or any form of protection.
And again, later we see what happens when things come into contact as well, and it's like, why aren't you wearing anything? This is crazy. Especially because he's got weird growths now on him and stuff, and things are like, clearly this is potentially something that could be spread, like clearly. But anyway,
there's a bit where they're in the he's in the bed, isn't he? And he goes to. It looks like he's going to go for his wife who's asleep.
Yeah.
And he sort of grabs some flowers. I think it is, isn't it?
It's a cactus, I think.
No, that's later. The cactus is later.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Then they basically chuck him back in the bed, and I think that's when he's persuaded to take him to the hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's the weird sort of thing where the wife hires a detective.
Well, she hires a private investigator.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do private investigating things.
No.
It's like he's like more like a mercenary or something. Like, what have you hired this guy for? Like,
job guy.
A private investigator is a non-public working investigator. He doesn't break people out of hospital.
He does say it. He says at one point something along the lines of, "Usually, I'm being paid by husbands to keep away from their wives," or something.
Yeah, like a PI, right?
Yeah.
It's really bizarre that he's somehow decided he'll be suited for this job, or he's willing. I guess it's just that much money. He's like, fine, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, the helper in the hospital before that is with Karun, and Karun hits the cactus plant, and the pot goes flying across the room. And obviously it seems pointless at the time, but it does.
Yeah, it does. It just seems really odd that he's sort of just going for this plant for some reason.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, she manages to talk to this hospital helper, and she's like, I just want to talk to the doctor who's looking after him to make sure he's all right. I know I can't go see him. And then the helper or the receptionist is like, well, sure. I mean, he's in that room just down there. You just turn left, go right, and there he is. But don't go in the room now.
I'll draw you a map.
Yeah, I'll draw you a map. But whatever you do, don't go in that room.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I won't go in that room.
And they're changing nurses in a minute, so
you've got a window as well. You've got a window of opportunity as well. But what I like is that she's like, okay, I promise I won't go in that room. And she doesn't. She walks outside and she pays someone else to go in that room.
That is very true, yes.
Now, this PI/spy/ whatever has a full doctor's outfit.
Yeah.
Waltzes in and says, hey, I'm part of the night shift. I'm here to swap with you.
Yeah.
And then
you're not supposed to be here for half an hour. Great, I can go and take some of the nurses to the Chinese down the road, sort of thing.
Happy days.
Yeah, off he goes. He's happy as Larry.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he manages to. So he's kind of getting away with it.
He gets him dressed, and he goes to sort of check on the way he's clear. That's when he hits the cactus.
Yes, yeah.
He comes back in and he's got his hand in his pocket, sort of thing.
That's right. You don't see the hand from that point on.
Yeah, and they go to the lift, and he says, "What are you hiding What are you hiding there? What have you got in your hand?" And of course, you don't get a reveal, but you do see something, and of course you see his look of terror, And
he never appears again.
He clubs him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then the sort of the he comes out and he's sort of stood there, and of course his wife comes through the door. She never asks where he is. The detective.
No, she's like, well, he was paid.
Well, he was paid. He's obviously just dumped him here, so yeah, we'll just leave him. So she takes him to her car and she drives off. Meanwhile, a nurse comes up the corridor.
She finds the helper.
She finds the helper. I actually really love the effects on the sort of withered.
I think, honestly, for the budget, some of these effects are great.
Yeah,
honestly.
And I think if I remember rightly, the hands, they were taken from a cast of somebody who had arthritis.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so they were all sort of, claw-like, and they just basically exaggerated them and made them look, more terrifying, I suppose, is how you put it.
Huh. That is interesting. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I like that. And so you get his wife taking him along, and of course he's still got his hand in his...
Yeah, and she's just interested in smoking, mostly. Yeah. And she's just kind of, like, rambling. She's like, oh, look after you. Everything's going to be great. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Never mind that I've taken you out of, care, and there's obviously something bloody wrong with you.
Well, she does notice the hand, doesn't she? She notices his hand under the coat and pulls the car over, or asks for the car to be pulled over. Who this guy was that picked them up as well. I mean, these people are just doing things without questioning anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, then we get, oh, God. Then he shows her his hand.
Yep.
We don't see it. She sees it. But the scream made me laugh out loud.
Yeah, same there.
It's like, to this day, it's the worst part of this movie. Her overacting is appalling.
Yeah, it's so bad, and it goes on for way too long.
It goes on way too long, and it's almost too delayed a reaction as well. It's just, it's like everything about it is just awful.
Just very, very bad. It is the worst part of the movie.
It's funny, because I had no idea that she wasn't an actress. And whenever I've watched this movie, I've always just thought, oh, God, she's terrible. And I never knew. Never knew. But of course, back at the hospital, everyone has arrived. And it turns out that the helper, his blood's been drained and his head got smashed in, basically. It's a bad time.
He's not looking too well.
No, he's not having a good time. So, of course, the police put out an APB.
Yeah, and Lomax also notices the cactus.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
He said he remembered. Oh, what is it? This thing? Oh, that's right. They find it's the wife. They find the wife, and she was screaming it in a thing, and she was saying that his hand looked like something that had all thorns all over it and stuff. And that's when Lomax says he remembered there was a cactus in the room. So they go up and they see that the cactus is gone and the pot is smashed.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then, of course, we get news, or this guy, a really helpful guy, who didn't say to Quatermass, hey, the film's going to be fine, because he thought the film was going to be knackered, and had no reason to think it would be fine, turns up to Quatermass with the good news, hey, the film's been processed. And Quatermass has a massive go at him.
Yeah, he does.
About not telling him sooner. And it's like, I didn't know it was going to be okay sooner, and there's still a chance it won't be okay. Yeah. I'm just letting you know. But Quatermass is like, fuck off and go get me the film right now.
And I love the conversation between the guy who goes to pick up his assistant and the guy who's developed the film. And he's saying, like, oh, we don't usually let a film out in this condition. It's like
professional pride.
It's like my gaffer says, I can't let you out there, and he says, was it along the lines of if your gaffer doesn't let my gaffer have this film, he'll come back and he'll bomb the whole place.
And do you know what? With this Quatermass, I kind of believe him.
I kind of think
that might have happened. So we get this wonderful. Is so good. We get this, like, film reel that was filmed supposedly on the inside of the rocket.
Yep.
that magically cuts to the dials every now and again.
Yeah.
And Quatermass even comments on it. It's like, see, it works. This magical technology. This switches to, in live action, switches to the dials. Like, okay. Sure.
And he does say that the film is designed that it only runs for so many minutes and then it cuts out.
Yes.
It runs back again later, sort of after a while.
And I actually think what they film here is kind of creepy when they're watching this with the music and stuff.
The music here is really good.
Really good.
It's more like just noise, really, the rising noise, but it's really well done. It's really effective. It's showing, the sort of horror of what's going on.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Eastern horror music with that kind of building tension rather than music.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you said, it's a building tone, and it just gets more and more intense as the scene goes on. Really love that scene actually, and I think the actors do a really good job of kind of reacting to it. And
I think because I think the main guy, Richard Wordsworth, who's playing Victor. He was a theatre actor, so you don't hear anything that's going on in there because there's no sound, but their reactions are really good. I think they're not sort of overdone or
no,
they're nicely sort of situated, and you get the sort of initial things you see them sort of just doing their jobs. They're pootering around the sort of the cabin and check it. You get the dial checks and everything's going smoothly, and then of course something happens.
Yeah.
And you get the thing you get like lights on the screen, don't you? And
yes, yeah.
Then there's like
it's like the whole screen kind of flashes and
you get a blurring motion on the screen. Well, on the film, and basically one of them keels over.
Yeah,
and that's where they find the suit when they come in, and then it cuts out for a bit, doesn't it? And it comes back, and I think the second one keels over.
Yeah, and then it just cuts off.
And then it cuts off, yeah. And Quatermass says, "Play it again."
Yeah. So meanwhile, Karun is kind of visiting general locations. Goes to a chemist shop.
Yeah. Well, they find I forgot the bit where they find there's a bit where they actually find some sort of remnant on the ship. And he says it's jelly.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's jelly. He says it could be human, could be animal, could be anything, but it's just organic jelly.
Do you want to do some checks on it? No.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just jelly. Ignore it. We don't want to look too closely at this potential crime scene.
Yeah, they do basically start to realize that whatever's happening
to
him,
normal.
He's absorbing. He's absorbing what the life from people and living things.
Yeah.
And he says basically he's going to need to feed, and that's when you get that. I like that. There's a nice little transition shot there where he says he's going to need to feed, and then you get the quick cut to the chemist closing the bin.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice little thing.
It is a really good shot.
Chemist sort of goes into the shop, and of course he's there looking for something. He's just going through all the chemicals, and he's just obviously frustrated with what he's finding, and he sort of smashes all these things up, and the chemist is like, "What are you doing? You can't go back there." And the guy realizes that he's it's again something wrong with your arm. Oh, let me have a look. You poor man. Let me see. And of course again he lets him see the hand on it, and I think this is when we actually this is the reveal, isn't it?
It is. I think this is the first time it's revealed.
Actually, see what it looks like. It does look like a cactus.
Yeah.
Very much reminding me of the what's the Doctor Who episode with the fourth Doctor and where he's a cactus.
God, I can't think now.
You know the one I mean.
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Remind me of that one. So yeah, obviously. Doesn't end too well for that dude either.
No, he gets teleported to Emmerdale Farm. I think he was in Emmerdale Farm, that guy.
It might have been.
The chemist, I think so.
It could well have been.
Yes.
So basically somebody has spotted him, so they go to the chemist, and it's empty, and it's smashed up and stuff.
Yeah. And then we get the Jane Asher bit as you pointed out. I
Yeah,
think.
well, the first of all, you get I think he talks about the chemicals that he was using were to accelerate the process.
Yes, yeah,
And then they find the body in the cupboard, stuffed in the cupboard.
yeah.
Which is quite funny. Yes, you get the Jane Asher bit. Which
I had no idea it was Jane Asher. That's really cool.
Yeah, he's basically after he leaves there, he collapses on like a narrow boat, I think, isn't it, on the docks?
Something like that, yeah.
And then you get Jane Asher coming across the bridge with her dolly, and I like it. She's sort of talking about, oh, we don't need to play with the other girls. They only talk about their new dresses and their. And I love that little conversation she's having with her dolly, and she's on about tea and things, and of course, he's not Lomax. Karun sort of wakes up upon hearing the noise, and he sort of starts getting up. And the girl says, "Oh, don't worry about the noise from the boat. It's just the rats."
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! So these kids are used to playing in really bad conditions.
Tough kids.
I mean, it's not long after the war. Really,
yeah, I was going to say.
But in the grand scheme of things, well, 10 years, but still, you can still see scarring on the.
Oh yeah.
Stuff.
But fortunately, the girl lives to see another day.
Yeah, some part of him still,
some humanity left.
When he comes off the boat, and she says she's what invites him to tea and stuff. His face sort of lightens. He does actually sort of smile when he sees her.
Yeah, it's kind of a Frankenstein moment.
Yeah, he sort of walks towards her, and at first but then of course the hand sort of comes out, and he manages to sort of control himself enough to get away from her.
Yeah.
He does break her dolly, though.
Yeah, but, that's probably the better of the options.
Exactly. At least she survives.
Unfortunately, many zoo animals do not survive. As he heads to the zoo, London Zoo, and
you get that. There's a really nice little picture of just his eyes in a bush, but you can see that the skin around his eyes is worse. You don't get a really good look at it, but you can see that he's already, he's changing that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, at the zoo, many animals die, and obviously they turn up to investigate. And this is where we start to see there's a trail now. He's like leaving like a snail trail wherever he's going.
Yeah.
And as he's mutating and bits are falling off and whatever is going on with him.
Yeah. And they find a small piece of him.
Yes. Yeah.
Which they collect.
Yeah.
And like there's a bit where he's looking at the thing, and Lomax says, "Well, that's put me off my tea."
Yeah. So they take it back to the lab, and they discover that it's kind of not necessarily sentient, but it's self-sufficient, isn't it? It's kind of like it's its own organism now. It's kind of like the Thing in a weird way.
Yeah, they feed it a couple of rats and
although they don't touch on it too much, because I kind of feel like at this point when you're saying, well, bits of him that fall off can survive outside of him, you've kind of got a Thing-like situation, which they don't go into. It kind of ends up just being the one creature, and they leave it at that. But yeah, so
he does say there are nodules on it that he says could lead in a few hours could lead to spawn.
Yeah,
and that's when we do get the idea that then he's going to be spawning at some point.
That's their big fear, isn't it? It's like, well, if he can self procreate, then we're screwed. Like, we're done.
So that there's obviously there's a big old manhunt for him.
We get the lady in the police station, Thora Hird in the police station. She's so good. I love her as this nagging drunk.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it when she's
so
saying,
good.
The doctor says I can't walk and stuff. So I can walk to her. So I have to sit down. I was sat down in the doorway, just minding my own business. I wasn't there for long, mind. She says. Thor Hood's fucking amazing. I love him.
You just feel like this policeman has probably had her in so many times, and he's just so
heard
fed
stories of seeing things a number of times. And she says that when she describes the thing, and he says, "Well, how did it walk?" And he says, "Walked." She says it crawled right up the wall. And of course, the copper is like, actually,
so actually, you finally said something of merit.
And I love the way she says, "You mean I did see something?" And she says, "It's not like the usual things I see on a Saturday night." She says, "You mean it wasn't a gin goblin?"
Yeah,
which I think that's great. I love that expression, gin goblin.
But yeah, of course, we're not in America, so it's not the Empire State. So of course, it's Westminster Abbey is where the trailer's leading.
Yeah, it's going through renovations, and yes. I think it's not long after the coronation. So, which is
the BBC are there and everything.
Which is apt, yeah. And I love I absolutely adore the bit where they go in. There's a body. Somebody's already been killed.
Yeah.
And they got the guy who's doing the presenting, Sir whatever his bloody name is.
Yeah.
And the guy says to him, "Well, what should we do?" "I don't know." "Well, it's a live broadcast. Should we go ahead anyway?" "Well, I'm all right to go ahead if you are." And they just stood over the body of this dude.
Okay, never mind. Don't worry.
Never mind him. The cameras won't pick him up. It'll be fine.
No, well, actually, one of the tripod legs is short, so we could use the body to prop the camera up. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It'll be fine.
Oh, it was the 50s. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Although I'm pretty sure even back then, this is pushing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually they managed to focus their camera on the now creature.
Yeah.
And it's managed to get up into the scaffold. We never kind of see how it gets up there. Presumably it just kind of crawled its way up there and climbed, and it's got kind of tentacly things at this point, and it looks kind of squid-like.
You do see like the string at some point.
Oh yeah.
When you see there's a bit as well when they get the sample is grown and it escapes its little confinement.
Yes, yeah.
And you see it looks kind of like a glove.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get to the rats in the cage, but it doesn't quite make it before it starves to death, basically.
Yeah.
And that's when he says about the spawning thing. So they get to this. They eventually put out the call that's we found the thing. It's in Westminster Abbey. So of course the team turn up, and of course he's there barking orders as usual.
Of course, yeah.
And they basically
it's like he's got like zero jurisdiction over any of this now, and he's still somehow people are still listening to him. Okay,
it's just I guess it's one of those things that if you walk into a room and bark orders enough,
and act like you own the place,
exactly, people take note.
Yeah, he's making it work for himself. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course, by this point, there is no real visible human aspects to him left. He's just a thing. He's a blob.
It's a big sort of blob with tentacles and an eye.
Yeah.
I actually think it's pretty effective. It's disgustingly organic enough that it's like you said about the color. I think maybe if it was in color, it might not have worked so well, but it works really well in black and white.
The thing I like about it, and it's not always the case, but with most films. And TV shows, when it comes to depicting aliens, they're always humanoid. And I guess that makes sense. Obviously it's relatable and things, but I always like it when it's something truly alien. And I feel like films like this is like he is just, and like The Blob to an extent, where it's like it's just completely alien in every sense of the word to us. It's just bizarre. I kind of like that sometimes. And you're right, yeah, like you said, in color probably wouldn't have worked so well. In black and white and from the distance that it's shot at, you get a couple of close-ups, not too many. They're quite careful with how they film it. It works really well.
The close-up when you get the eye I thought was quite good.
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, they have their heated argument conversation about how to kill the thing. Because of course they can't risk spreading it across London with an explosion, because then there'd be millions of them.
It just blow up. He's like, no, that'll just spread it.
So instead, they think we'll electrocute the thing.
Yeah. Luckily, it's on a metal scaffold.
Yeah, don't they like reroute the entire grid?
Yeah, they get
like, that'll be fine.
You get the Battersea power station, and you get them rerouting all of the things and turning out everything out. Apparently, they actually did that. They asked for Battersea. They were supposed to just switch out the lights directly in front of the station,
Right.
but apparently the guy who was
They
doing
accidentally did it.
switched out the whole sort of like embankment, I think.
Oh wow.
But I'm guessing it was only for a very short period, so it wasn't. I don't imagine it would have been, and it would have been at night, so I wouldn't imagine it would that much disruption.
I don't know if it's the actual inside of Battersea as well, but it's an awesome set. If not,
I think so. No, I think
I'm assuming it's real, but yeah,
the Battersea Power Station, yeah.
So yeah, all the all of London town is like cut of power,
plunged into darkness.
Yeah, plunged into darkness.
And there's a guy. There's a guy sort of like crawling along the ground to get to the scaffold, where he sort of he rigs up this line to the scaffolding, and then basically legs it.
Yeah. Just in time as the creature is fried from electricity, and finally his suffering ends. And then immediately after, Quatermass is like, well, I'm going to do this again.
Well, he's actually quite a cool scene, because he just walks off, and they're like, every time he passes someone asks him a question, and he just doesn't answer them.
But he does say, he like almost immediately is like, I'm going to start again.
Yeah, eventually somebody says, what are you doing, sir? And he says, what we do now? He says, I'm going to start again.
It's like, I'm gonna kill 3 more astronauts.
You get that really cool shot of, and it's obviously a matte painting.
Yeah,
it's him walking up that lamplit street.
Oh, it's great.
To the distance, and I thought that's a really good shot. And then you get the final shot of another rocket going up.
Of course, and and then that is the Quatermass Experiment. Now, I absolutely love this one. I feel like we made fun of it quite a bit, but it's mainly just I both find it amusing and also love how much of a dick Quatermass is in this movie. It amuses me to no end.
I don't think it's not really a detriment to the movie. I think
I think it's a positive, because he it would have been too easy to make him a likable scientist. It's cool to see someone like kind of almost against type for the time.
I think one of the major differences between this and the original series is that the end. So in the original series, he actually absorbs the other 2 astronauts, and the 3 consciousnesses are still in the creature.
Oh.
So
I've not watched the original series.
No, well, you can only watch 2 episodes of it. And I think it's only the first 2 episodes, but I know the story. And basically, what happens at the end is Quatermass appeals to the consciousnesses inside the creature, and basically they commit suicide, as it were. That's how they kill it in the original. They don't like blow it up or anything, or electrocute it. He persuades it to commit suicide.
Wow.
And they basically thought that ending just wouldn't work on a movie. They wanted something a little more, I guess, bombastic and final,
right,
than him just talking. And as somebody pointed out, you can't really imagine Brian Donlevy talking.
I think he would have just shouted them
exactly
into suicide.
Shouting them into submission.
I absolutely love this film. It's directed by Val Guest, who also did It's a Wonderful World, and obviously Quatermass 2 as well, The Abominable Snowman. He did a lot for Hammer.
He was doing a lot of because that's the thing about Hammer at this point. At this point, they're doing mostly movies that are the double feature.
Yeah.
And most of them that are kind of like bawdy comedies, at this point. And this was the movie that kind of set them up as they became.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, hang on a minute, there's money in this. We can actually do this. And of course, the Frankenstein movie is what completely sealed.
Of course.
The horror.
I think you're right, though. I think this paved the way.
But yeah, this was what set them up. Is like, hang on, we can actually start making money here. We don't have to start, we don't have to just make, the B feature. We can start making actual
actual
proper
films. Yeah,
films, so it had a real sort of good setup for their future. And
yeah,
the second movie is, I think, the first second movie to ever have the second in its title.
yeah. Because it is just Quatermass 2, isn't it?
Yeah, other than Roman numerals or anything like that, it's the
Yeah.
first one to should have a numeral.
Which was also directed by Guest, I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
Now apparently, Guest decided he was going to shoot the Quatermass Experiment as if it was a documentary, like a TV documentary. I'm not sure how well that comes across, but it
I think parts of it does.
Parts of it, yeah, it's difficult when it's like inside of a car, and
sometimes when you see the monsters, it looks like it could be.
Yeah,
but, yeah. And Nigel Neal, of course, the writer, great science fiction writer. He wrote the Stone Tapes and is it the Year of the Sex Olympics and stuff like that. So he wasn't overly keen on this adaptation. He certainly didn't like the Quatermass character. And amazingly, of course, at the time, because it was a BBC script, he didn't get any money for it either. He didn't get any extra money because he got paid later. They reimbursed him later, but at the time he didn't get anything, and he was very disappointed with.
Well, I think Andrew Keir is closer to the Quatermass that he had in mind.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think by the time the third one comes around, they decided that they could. People would have probably. It's been long enough that people wouldn't mind a recast anyway, and they they obviously they rejigged it and made it more to his liking.
And I do think, like, objectively, I do think Quatermass and the Pit is the best of the three as a movie.
And I don't think I've ever seen all of the 70s one with John Mills.
Me either, actually. I was thinking the other day that I need to check that out.
But there's some. It sounds like there's some interesting stuff that could have been made for it.
Yeah.
It was a planned sort of like prequels and things, which would all sound like they could have been like very interesting. And so, yeah, I really like it. And Neil, of course, obviously, this went on to be, very influencing on Doctor Who. And
100%. I mean, like I said, Quatermass 2, it literally feels like a Third Doctor episode.
Yeah, it does.
And obviously that was their point when they got to the Third Doctor. They were like, let's just do Quatermass and bring the aliens to Earth. Fine.
Exactly. That's exactly how those Third Doctor ones feel. They really do feel like, him as the science advisor for the military and the aliens turning up. And it's exactly that. And of course, the Doctor Who makes a lot of references to the rocket group, and I think they even mention Bernard in Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yes.
I think one of them says, I wish Bernard was here, and one of the others says, the British rocket group have got their own problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was there's lots of stuff
in universe.
Yeah, in universe, which I really love.
I love all that stuff. It would have
been nice for Quatermass to have appeared in
that would have been so good.
But it might have been a bit too much,
on the nose.
Too many sort of scientist types for where it was back then.
It would have been great just to have seen the Third Doctor arguing with Quatermass, this Quatermass particularly, because they would have just, they would have not got on at all. It would have been great. Very entertaining.
Let's face it, the Third Doctor is incredibly brash and overbearing at times as well.
Yeah. Jumping ahead to the third film, which one day we'll get to, Quatermass and the Pit. Have you ever watched Guyver Dark Hero?
Yes.
It is. Have you ever noticed that it's basically Quatermass and the Pit, but with the Guyver fighting monsters?
Yes, I never really thought of it that way.
The first time I watched Guyver Dark Hero, I was like, this is Quatermass and the Pit, but with the Guyver fighting zoonoids in the middle.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
I love those two movies. Those Guyver movies are great.
The first one is not. It's not. But I mean, neither of them are great. But I have a very big soft spot for the second one.
I think they're great.
Yeah, so do I. I love them. I love them.
They're not great, as in
No.
I suppose filmically or nutritionally stimulating, but they are bloody great movies. I love. The effects are fantastic.
Oh, the second one's amazing.
Screaming at George, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and Solid Snake.
Yes.
It's good stuff. David Hayter's a way better voice actor than he is an actual actor. But yeah, I love Guy for Dark Hero, but it always makes me think of Quatermass in the Pit because it is effectively the same story.
I guess I've never really
you then add Zoonoids and the Guyver to it.
Put that together, but yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, I'm sure we'll get to the other movies, and like I said, Quatermass 2, he really does become a bit more likable. It's been a while
since I've seen it, but I do seem to remember him being less brash.
Well, in the second one, it's not his fault.
Yeah.
So I guess that helps.
That makes that's always a bonus.
Yeah, because he's just.
I think they've also slowly. I think he, over the course of the 3 movies, I think he's also has less and less power, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's true. I think
he does seem to have less power within the sort of group.
I think the second one starts with him having been a bit demoted because of what he did in the first film. Because he turns up for a meeting, doesn't he, in the second one, which is how he gets involved. He's turning up to the military for a meeting about the rocket group, and then
I'll have to watch it again. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I think he's trying to convince them to do another launch, and they're having none of it, and somehow he gets roped in.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I always loved that second one, but yeah. So anyway, yes, the Quatermass Experiment from 1955, highly recommended. All of them, really, all of the Quatermass movies from that run. I can't speak to the others, but
there is another one. Well, not strictly speaking a sequel, but because they wanted to do a sequel, but Neil wouldn't write it, so they basically did another, which is X the Unknown.
Yes, yeah, I like that movie. That feels very Quatermass.
Yes, basically, it was designed to be a Quatermass movie without Quatermass in it, so they just rejigged it because they didn't have Neil's approval of the character. So and then of course they got the approval later and did number 2. But yeah, so there's that as well, which it's like an off piece for it.
Yeah, well, it does work quite well. It feels very, it feels very Quatermass Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think even with the American hero in the first 2, they both still feel very British. They're very British sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
So and I think that somebody said that the main difference between a British and American sci-fi movie is the budget.
Yeah.
And that because they don't have the budget, they kind of concentrate more on the character building, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah. So we'll be back next week. We've got to find some films to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, but I'm sure something will come along. But
I do have I was given the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, cool! Now you could do what I did, but in reverse.
Yeah, I'll see how that goes.
Well, I can tell you that you're going the wrong way. Because I went with Multiverse of Madness and then Everything Everywhere, and I was like, oh wow,
you did it the right way around.
you want to end on a high, not on a low.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be interested to see what you think of it. It's got some scenes in it. There is still some Sam Raimi in it, Yeah,
well, that's as you said, and as I've heard other people say, there's still you can still tell.
It's very Raimi in the way it's shot, for sure. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear your review of that next week. But yes, until then, stay safe, take care, and we'll catch you next time.